Well, hello everyone. Today's going to be a little bit different if you've watched any of the previous videos that I've posted. This isn't going to be about droid building or Disney souvenirs. This is going to be about one of my other interests, which is retro computing. And a little while back, I went to PRGE, that's the Portland Retro Gaming Expo, and there was this box that was sitting on the floor at one of the booths, and it said $40 for the whole bin. And I looked down in there, and on top I saw a Commodore Plus 4, I saw a Commodore 128, and I could tell there was other computers underneath. And I thought, hey, for 40 bucks, I'll take a chance. And so I bought the box. And as I went through it, I found out, yes, it had a Commodore Plus 4, and it had 3 Commodore 128s. So I thought, hey, I know, I'll go through all these, I'll check them out, and maybe I'll be able to piece together a nice Commodore 128 for myself. And I have a lot of other retro computers, but the Commodore 128 is one that I was missing. And I never had one myself back in the day, and I know they were kind of a bit of a strange machine. They were there was a Commodore 64 basically inside it, but I know that it had 2 processors, 2 video chips. It had different modes of operation. It could run CP/M. It could run in Commodore 128 native mode. It can run in Commodore 64 mode. And so I thought, wow, it'd be fun to have a chance to play around with some of these. So the first thing I decided to do is to start going through these and see if they actually work. And so the one that I have here is the first one that I'm going to check out, and I realized that that's a little bit bigger of a task than I thought. I don't have any of the desirable test equipment for this. I don't have dead test cartridges. I don't even have a working disk drive for this. I have a 1541 drive that when I took it out of the box to see if it was good enough to check this out, I realized that it was not working. So I'm going to push ahead and see if I can figure out some other ways of testing out this system. So this system I'm going to label as number 1. This will be the first of 3 Commodore 128s that we'll be looking at. And I have a feeling that this is going to be a busy enough video that there will actually be 3 different videos, one for each of the Commodore 128s. And then once those are done, I'll get into that Commodore Plus 4 that was in the box and see what's up with that. So this thing is filthy, and I hate to think about what this is that's on it, but I'm not going to clean these up until I have a little bit of an idea of whether or not they work. Well, to get started, we're going to need a power supply for this unit, and none of these came with their original Commodore 128 power supplies. So we're going to have to improvise here. I do have one of these adapters that will let me connect a Commodore 64 power supply up to the 128 to get it powered up. So I could technically grab one of these Commodore 64 power supplies, but I'm not going to do that because these are, one, underpowered for these in terms of the current they can supply, and secondly, you really don't want to use one of these if you don't have to. There are ways that you can use these with, there's kind of a device that can be plugged on here to protect your computers from any damage that could be caused by these power supplies. But when these power supplies fail, and I guess they fail often, one of the things that they do is they put the incorrect voltage into the computer and damage it. So this is not an option today. But another option that I have is a modern power supply replacement. Again, this is not for the Commodore 128. This is a power supply that I bought for my Commodore 64. And normally I wouldn't want to use this on this machine because they do make a Commodore 128 model, and this is made by a company called Keylog. And they have a 128 model that puts out the proper amount of power where the Commodore 64 units are lower power, except for with this particular power supply, I bought one that was designed to power both a 1541-2 disk drive and a Commodore 64. So it has two ends, and the actual amount of power that it's capable of putting out is adequate for the Commodore 128 if I'm also not powering the disk drive off of this. So internally, these have different sizes of power modules. This has a Meanwell power module in it that I think is rated at 20 watts. The straight 64 brick without the capability of powering the drive is only 10 watts, so it would be a little light for this, but this should work just fine, and in combination with this adapter, I believe we should be able to power this thing up. So let's go ahead and get this connected to some power and see what happens. Sure that our unit's off. And we'll plug our pin adapter here. There we go. Get that plugged into the side. All right, so we've got power. The other thing we're going to need is to plug this into a monitor. And I do have the video cable for my 64. So we'll be putting composite out on this. And now I think we're ready to do a power up on it. So we've got our power supply, we've got our video cable. I am going to attempt to capture the video out on this, and I apologize in advance that I don't have a very good setup to do that. So this might be a little bit fuzzy and not what we would hope for, but it's what I have, so that's what I'm going to use. And let's go ahead and power this up. Okay, I think that's a pretty good start. We're seeing the Commodore splash screen come up, and from what I've researched, this, when you just turn it on, comes up in Commodore 128 mode. And we're at a ready prompt, so I think the first thing we should do is to do our Hello World program. Never claimed to be a good typist. All right. Well, so far so good. I was half expecting this thing to just start up and have a black screen, being in a $40 bin of computers. So I'm pretty pleased to see that it actually does something. Okay, now, so that is Commodore 128 mode. It booted up into. So far, all the keys that I've used on the keyboard seem to be working, although that's not the same as doing an extensive test of all the keys. We're just going to keep going, and if we happen to find some that are not working, we'll make notes of that and come back to it. The next thing I want to do is to see if we can get this started in Commodore 64 mode, and I know there's two ways to do it. You can hold the Commodore key down and then power this on, or you can type, I think it's Go 64, and it should, if it's working correctly, go into Commodore 64 mode. And there we are. That's the typical kind of blue background screen that we get. And again, just for fun, we have to do Hello World again from the 64 side of things. And there we are. So, two things on our checklist. we're able to check both the 128 and the Commodore 64 mode, and we know at least that there are signs of life there. So some of the next things we need to check out are the interface ports. So we need to check out the dataset port. We need to check out the serial port, because that's how we're going to be able to do further tests on this. And we're especially going to need to be able to do some disk drive emulation to check out the CPM mode on this and to see if that works. So I also understand these units have not just two microprocessors. So it has the typical, I think it's an 8502, which is a basically kind of, I think, an Uber 6502 that does the Commodore 64 and the native 128 mode. But it also has a Z80 in this that's capable of running CPM. And so we're going to want to check that microprocessor out. It also has two video chips in it. So there's a video display chip for the 80 column mode that this will do, and then there's a standard kind of a VIC chip type of video display for the 64 and the 128 side. So we need to know that both video chips work. We need to know that both processors work. So far we know that one of the video chips works, and we know that one of the processors works. So I think the next thing that we're going to want to do to check out the other video chip is to get this thing into 80 column mode. And that's on a different video connector. So this thing has the standard video out, but it also has this video out, and that's where we need to plug in an 80 column monitor. Now I don't have the correct monitor type to plug in here. So we have to figure out a way to do 80 column mode. And in reading online, there is a way to get composite out of that port, monochrome composite, and that would be enough at least so that we could check 80 column mode. But I don't have a composite cable that works with that, so we're going to need to take a little break. In order to test the 80 column output from the Commodore 128, I'm going to need to put something together so that I can see the output, because I don't have an actual monitor of the type that we would normally connect up to that DB9 port on the back of the Commodore. I need to make something so that at least we can kind of test out if there's anything coming out the 80 column side. So I'm going to put together just a little kind of a monochrome composite cable that should give us the output that we need. So I'm going to whip that together really quickly, and then we'll be able to try it out. All right, now that we have this made, we should be able to check out the 80 column mode on this machine. So let's power this down, and I'm going to tip this up and plug it in. And I know probably I don't need to power it down to plug this on, but just anytime I'm moving the machine around or manipulating it where I could pull a cable or do something, I just feel more comfortable with the machine off. Just an old habit. Okay, now we're going to need to get some video output to our composite monitor. Okay, now let's try this again. I'm going to bring it up in 128 mode, but now we're going to press this 80 column display key, and I'm going to power it up again, and we're going to see what happens. Now we're connected up to that second display port. Okay. This also looks good. So I'm feeling pretty good so far. So now this is the way that we're able to check that second video chip, or that VDC, is by getting some kind of display in 80 column mode, and I think we have that. So we can check the second video chip off of our list. One processor, 2 video chips checked. So far, so good. And actually the 80 column mode on here I think is clearer than the other. That's kind of cool. Hello from 80 column world. How about that? And hopefully everything is displayed, or is typed properly there. Our test is accomplished. All right, I'm going to switch us back to the standard display. So we're going to jump out of 80 column mode for the rest of this. I just wanted to know that that worked. Well, actually, that's not true. We are going to get back into 80 column mode again to check out the CPM side of this machine and see if that Z80 is working. But we're not going to do that quite yet. We're back in the standard 40 column mode, and the next thing that I want to check out is to see if we're getting anything from the SID chip in this thing. And I thought a fun way to do that would be to kill 2 birds with 1 stone, and that's by plugging in the data set, and we'll check out the cassette port that way, as well as load a little program that will let us play around with the SID chip some. So we're going to turn this off again, and we're going to hook up the data set. So let me make some room here. And I think that this is the original model of data set that goes back to the VIC-20, if not earlier. I know later they changed the looks of that quite a bit, but this is the old original one that I have from the VIC-20. And it should work just fine for us. Bring this back on. Now, one of the things that I'm aware of is that a lot of the tape software I have is really for the 64. So I want to put this in 64 mode. That will still allow us to check out the tape and the SID chip. So, and I've got a sound program on here, and this is going to be slow as molasses, so I am going to start this loading, but we may kind of fast forward through that part unless you really just want to see the screen go blank and take a whole long time to do anything. So my sound program that I have on that is called SNDB. And since we're loading from cassette, we're loading from device 1. And time to press play and hurry up and wait. Fortunately, this is a really short little program, so it'll probably take longer to find it than it will to load it. Well, we needed to rewind the tape a little bit because I was already past it, so let's try that again. And again, device 1 because we're loading off of cassette. And play. So it's hard for me to imagine really waiting for a lot of this to load. I think back to, I had a VIC-20 way back in the day, and I remember getting excited about having a 16K expansion module for it, and then I was going to get to play some better games, and I was buying 16K games on cassette, and it seems like it took probably exaggerating, but it seems like it took 20 minutes to load a game. And then if anything went wrong while you were playing the game, or the system locked up, or you just got frustrated and wanted to start it over again, you rewound the tape and you waited another 20 minutes. And finally, the thing would start. And I just don't think we realize how good we have it in the modern day when you have these massive programs that load in seconds. And I know it's easy for people to get frustrated even seeing a black screen in the middle of a video game while it's loading. And they just have no idea what it was like back in the day to load game software on these systems. Hey, it found it. Now, in a moment, it'll actually think about loading it. All right, this is looking pretty good. We've been able to connect up our cassette or our data set and load software. So that tells me that our cassette port is good. And this actually came from Compute magazine. If anyone remembers Compute, they used to have articles about different computers. They had a Gazette, I believe is what the title of it was, Compute Gazette, which was specifically for the Commodore computers like the 64 and VIC-20 and 128. And you could type in programs that you saw in those magazines, and this is one of those. And this actually is to demonstrate the SID chip. And I don't really know a lot about synthesizers, but there are a lot of different settings that you can put in here. So we'll just pick some at random here just to get this to work and hopefully hear something. I know what this does on my Commodore 64, and I'm hoping to get something close to it and not just silence or static out of this thing. So let's see. Let's do 1 and 255. And I don't even know what this does, but we'll pick 60. Ah! Okay, so we have sound. All right, I think that's good news. I don't know that this means we have a 100% functioning SID chip. Those things can be problematic and mostly work, sort of work, not work at all, and everything in there. So I'm going to call this successful though, because we got sound out of it. So this is a good test. Cassette works on the cassette port. We can load a program. We can play sound. So far, I'm feeling better and better about my $40. I think I would have been happy paying $40 just for this machine, even with what it's doing so far, because these are very repairable computers, and it's just great to see so much functionality out of this one. All right, now I'm going to connect up our floppy disk emulator for the next set of tests, and to do that I'm going to have to disconnect the cassette because it's going to pull its power off of the cassette port. So let me get that out of the way. And these hook up basically the same way that a regular 1541 hooks up, and my little device actually even looks like a 1541. So this is going to emulate the disk drive. I've created, I went to a website and did some research to figure out how do you even get CP/M to boot on one of these, and I found a disk image and a bootloader that I could just put on an SD card on my PC, and we're going to put it in here and see together for the first time, does this work? And a couple of things that I do know from the reading that I did is that we have to have 80 column mode working for CP/M. At least I think that's true. If that's not true, please feel free to let me know in the comments. In fact, I don't know a lot about these 128s, and so there could be a lot of things I'm saying incorrectly or doing incorrectly in assessing this system, and I would appreciate all of your help in the comments, just letting me know other things that I should test or try, or things that I'm incorrect on, because I'm learning about this system as well. So I'll take that as help and I appreciate it very much. All right, so we need to get this set back up for 40 column. So I am going to change our capture device here to look at the 80 column monitor, and I should be able to just start this up in 80 column mode, and it should boot straight into CPM if I've done everything right with what it said online. So let's see what happens. Okay, we're booting CPM plus. Now I have a feeling that this isn't going to be a super fast process either, and part of me kind of wonders why you would have really wanted CPM on your Commodore 128. From everything I've heard, it didn't perform super well, and well, it seems like it's something in there that would have made the computer more expensive, but it's there and we should test it. And I think from what we're seeing already, I'm feeling pretty good that Z80 processor in this is working. And I'm going to let this go clear through until we get to a prompt and can do something, because I want to know for sure that that part of this is working. One of the things I also don't really have a way to check easily here is to check all 128K of memory that's in this. I know that there are some routines that I could run to check the memory that the Commodore 64 mode uses, which I haven't even done here. And I'm going to go out on a limb and assume that if all the different modes of this are working and we can run software, that we probably don't have serious memory problems, but that I'm sure would be a good thing to check. Okay, we have an A prompt, and I know that as with DOS, we can run a directory, and that's okay. So that is what is on the disk image. It's just disk 1 of CPM, and oh, and we have key clicks. That's interesting. And let's run help and see what kind of things we can do in here. Okay, I can tell the help command is either stuck or slow. Something on these old computers you have to have is patience, because I know sometimes it seems that nothing is happening on these. It's especially true of some of these old Commodore systems. But if you wait, eventually you'll get somewhere. So again, if some of you are just used to modern computers, this probably just, defies all reality for you that this stuff is so slow. But back in the day, when we got a hold of these computers and they were modern machines, it was just amazing we could even have a computer at home. So given that, these are really pretty neat. And it looks like this works. We ran the help command and we can look at different help topics. So let's say, well, let's see what Mac is. Oh, okay. It is a macro assembler. Reads assembly language statements from a file. Interesting. Very good. So this, I believe, is a success. We're booted in CPM. That tells me, and in 80 columns, so there's a lot of things we've checked off here. We ran this off of a disk emulator, so we know that the serial port works, and we know that the chips associated with that are working. We know that the Z80 is working. We know the 80 column mode is working. We've loaded off cassette. We're really pretty much all the way around having a successful run with this. Now, the one thing that I said I was going to check, and I don't know that I will, is the game controller port, because I don't have any games here that would actually use that. So that's something that I may have to look into and see if we can find a cartridge game or something where we could test that out. But with the state that the rest of this is in, I'm going to say I'm pretty confident that probably those game ports work too. Well, I'm pretty happy. The first computer that I've checked on my $40 bin of Commodore computers seems to be working. The next thing that we need to do with this system now is to clean it up. It is disgusting. There is stuff on here that I don't want to know what it is. I'll be sterilizing my hands, my workbench, and this machine before we do much more with it. But successful, yes. And worth the $40, it certainly is to me. So what I would like from all of you is if you have any advice about the Commodore 128 for me, further tests that I should do with it, things that I don't know about it or didn't mention about it that are interesting, anything you really want to tell me about in the comments about this machine would be much appreciated. And in the next video, we're going to move on to machine number 2 and see what we're dealing with. Imagine that if I have a whole bin of working 128s for $40. That will be pretty phenomenal. Well, thank you for joining me, and I hope you enjoyed taking a look at this computer with me. We have several more to go, so I hope you'll come back. If you like this video, please do give it a like, and do consider subscribing. I do a lot of different hobby-related stuff. I do droid building and electronics, some video game stuff. I like to repair video game consoles, and I love these old retro computers. So if any of that is of interest to you, please do follow along. Thanks again for watching.